As Hashem, today's daf is daf Samach Gimel. We're beginning on the Mishnah, daf Samach Beis and Beis. Towards the bottom, the last second Mishnah on the page. We learned yesterday that a Eved who decided to become a Nazir, an Eved Kanani, of course. So the master had the right to say, "Stop! I don't want you to be a Nazir." So therefore, when he's living by the master, the slave must drink wine and metamala mesim. However, if the Eved got a get shechrar, he got freed by the master. So he has to keep his Nazirus, because the Nazirus was suspended as long as he was by the master. After he leaves the master and is freed by the master, then he has to revert back to becoming a Nazir. So our Mishnah discusses a situation like this. Over mikneged panav. The Mishnah begins, over mikneged panav. If the slave ran away. Now here, the slave ran away. He's a frum slave, right? A slave is like a Jew. He's a frum yid, except he has only the mitzvahs of a woman. So he ran away from the master, and now he doesn't know, am I a Nazir? Because now I'm away from my master, and therefore I have to keep Nazirus, or am I still under the jurisdiction of my master, just I'm not living there? He's a fugitive. Rab Meir Omer lo yishta, he should not drink, because Rab Meir seems to say that he's a Nazir. Rabbi Yossi Omer yishta, Rabbi Yossi says you could drink wine because you're not a Nazir. It seems to be that you're still by the master and you still have to suspend your Nazirus. You could drink wine. So the Gemara wants to understand what is the root of the machlokes. The Gemara says, they're arguing on, do they both hold of Shmuel? Do you hold of what Shmuel's opinion is? Because when a slave runs away, he did not get the paperwork. He did not get the get shikra. He's supposed to get a get shikra, like a person who gets divorced from a woman gets divorced, gets a get. So a slave that is supposed to go free is supposed to get a get shikra, a get that frees him. So the Gemara says, let us say that the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi is regarding, do you hold of the opinion of Shmuel? Rama Shmuel said, a mafkir avdoi, someone who gave up on a slave, or he says, my slave is hefker. So Yotzel Cheres, the slave goes out free. The Ein Sarch get shikra. He doesn't need to write a whole get, a freedom get for the slave. The fact that he said, I give up, anybody wants my slave can have it, so the slave goes free. So therefore, let's presume what happened when the slave ran away. This owner gave up hope of ever finding him again. So he's no more a slave. He's actually a free man. Therefore, Rabbi Meir is slave to Shmuel. Rabbi Meir holds of what Shmuel said, and therefore, if you're not a slave anymore and you're a free man, you have to keep your Nazirus. So therefore, you should not be drinking wine. Rabbi Yossi less slave to Shmuel, but Rabbi Yossi does not hold of Shmuel. He holds that as long as you didn't get the get shikra, you're still considered not a free slave. And therefore, if you're not a free slave, then your Nazirus is suspended, and therefore you could drink wine. So the Gemara says, like, not so. The Kuli Alma, everybody could hold Islay de Shmuel. Everybody could hold of Shmuel. Both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi hold of Shmuel. And that if indeed the owner would have said, I give up hope of ever finding my slave, then the slave would go free, and he would have to be a Nazir. But here, the owner did not give up hope. He's actually confident that he's going to find the slave again. So therefore, it seems that the slave still remains a slave. So, the one that says he can drink because he's still probably under the jurisdiction of his master, and he's not a free man. So that's Rabbi Yossi. Therefore, he could drink wine. So at the end, this master is going to find him. And therefore, the master, during the time that he's on the lam, would want lishte chamra, that his slave should drink wine, so he should not get weak. Because again, the whole point, the master is against this whole Nazirus business. And since the master never really gave up hope of ever finding the slave, therefore the slave is still considered a slave. So during that time, if the frum slave calls up the rabbi and says, Rabbi, what should I do? The rabbi will tell him, drink wine. Because the master would want you to drink wine, because if he ever finds you, he wants you to be robust, not weak. But why does Rameir hold he shouldn't drink? It seems that he's not a free man. He's still a slave. So why should he keep Naziris and not drink wine? Because Rameir holds Savar lehevelet tzara. We want this slave to be deprived of drinking wine, so he'll feel back in pain. So he'll eventually return back to his master. Funny that we want him to feel uncomfortable being running away from your master, and therefore, we're going to deprive you from wine, even though technically you should be able to drink wine. We're going to deprive you from the wine so that you'll give up hiding and return back to your master. That was the Mishnah. Now we go to a new Mishnah on Daf Samach Gimel Lamed Aleph. Our Mishnah is discussing a new novel halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We're going to learn that it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But here's the Mishnah. We know that if a Nazir, let's say he finished in Naziris, and 2 weeks later somebody tells him, "Hey, you became Tamei Meis. I saw you walk into a cemetery. You may have not realized it." So then, even after he brings the karbanis, he has to recount the Naziris because it turns out that he messed up, and he has to recount the Naziris. But there is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that even though they told you became a Tamei Meis, you don't have to recount your Naziris. And the Mishnah describes it like this: Nazir shigilech, a Nazir that finished his Naziris. How does a Nazir finish his Naziris? Is by taking that last haircut. He brought the karbonis and then took the haircut. The noidulai shu tamei, and then they told him, "Hey, you became tamei." So even though you brought the karbonis in tuma yadua, if it's a known tuma, if you became a tamei meis because it was a known grave that you walked over, soiser, it demolishes your whole Naziris, and you have to restart from number one, from day one. The im tumas atahaim, if it's a tuma of the deep, which means, let's say they told the person, "Look, you walk on, let's say, this street, and now we excavated the street, and they found a body that nobody knew was ever buried there." So there, it's called a tuma tahaim, a tuma of a deep that nobody knew about. So then, since you finished your Naziris, since the Nazir finished his Naziris by taking that haircut, chigilea, and then they told him, "Hey, you walked on such and such a street," and we discovered that there was a body that nobody ever knew, a tumas atahaim, ein a soiser. Then it doesn't demolish it. You don't have to recount your Naziris, even though it turns out you were Tamei Meis. But that's it. This is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But im achi lo gileach, but if you still didn't take your haircut of your Naziris, and let's say it's day 31, and they told you on day 15 you walked over this tumas atahaim. Whether it's a known tumah, whether it's a tumas atahaim, soiser, it demolishes your Naziris since you didn't finish your Naziris. The halacha l'Moshe says that it only works after you finish your Naziris. But if you didn't finish your Naziris, then it would demolish it, and you would have to recount again. Ketzat. Here's the example. Yorad, case number 1. Yorad Litval. A man, let's say, on the 15th day of his Naziris, he went to the mikvah, right? And he went to the mikvah, let's say he was Tamei. And then Tamei Meis. Okay, let's say, and then he restarted his count, and it was 30 days. And then they told him that when you went to the mikveh, you became Tamei again. That mikveh wasn't good because they found V'nimtza Meis Tzaf Pi Hamara. There was a dead body floating around this cave, which had water in it. And perhaps the dead body floated up to where you were being toivel. When you got out of the mikveh, so to speak, you were underneath the dead. You were underneath the dead body under the same roof. So therefore, this was a dead body floating on the water is considered a tuma yadua. So Tamei, even if you finished the Naziris already, you counted another 30, but you finished the Naziris, since they told you about a tuma yadua that you became Tamei with, you restart your Naziris. Nimsa Meshuka Bakarka Ma'ara. Let's say the cave, where the water of the cave was, it dried out. There's no water in the cave. And then they undug the ground of the cave, and there they discovered a dead body that nobody knew about, a Neolithic body. So then no problem. Yorad, then Nimsa Shushku Bakarka, then you're not Tahar. Then Yorad Lahakir. If the reason why you went into the mikvah was just to cool off, or doesn't matter, since it was a tumas hatahaim, tahar means what? You were tar. It means tar. Doesn't mean you're tar. Of course, you're tamei now, but your tar means if you finish your Naziris, you don't have to restart your whole Naziris. But let's say litar metumas ames. Wow. Let's say they found this tumas tahaim, but you're just trying to you went to the mikveh because you're trying to be mitahar from tumas hames, from because you mitame yourself to a mace. Therefore, the whole reason why you were in the cave was because you went into the mikveh. You went into the mikveh to become tar because you were tumas hames. Then you finished. Then you got out, and then you finished. You recounted your naziris, right? Because you recounted your naziris, and then you finished your naziris. Then they told you there was a tumas at the time when you went to the mikveh. So then, normally we say tumas at the time doesn't demolish your naziris, but since you were already tamei, then the halacha l'meishusine doesn't save you. You have to recount your naziris. Tamei. Tamei means you have to recount your naziris. Shecheskas tamei. Since you were already tamei mace, and now they discovered you became tumas. You had tumas at the haim. Tamei. You still have to recount your naziris. Eskas tar. But if you were a tar, and then they told you about a tumas at the time tahar. Shiraglayim ledavar. Whatever raglayim ledavar means over here. But the point is that the halacha l'meishusine says that it only works if you were tar. So let's review. There are three conditions in order for tumas atahaim to work. Number one, that means tumas atahaim means that you don't have to restart your naziris. They told you we just discovered a dead body, and you must have walked over it when you were nazir. So if you finished your naziris, then only if you finish your naziris, that's the condition one. Then you don't have to restart. And the other condition is that it's first of all, it has to be a tumas atahaim. That's one. Number two, it's after you finish your naziris. And number three, that you weren't a tmei mace. Because if they told you, oh, you touched the tumas atahaim when you became a tmei mace, so that tumas atahaim was a real tamei, and therefore you're not purified, and therefore you would have to restart your naziris. So the Gemara continues and says, what is the source of tumas atahaim? That there's a leniency for tumas atahaim. That nazir does not demolish what he's accomplished, so he doesn't have to redo the naziris. So how do I know that? The pasuk says, the Torah tells you that when does a nazir have to recount his naziris? If he sees the dead person die right in front of him. He has to see the dead body. If he didn't see the dead body, or if it was an unknown to him, then it does not demolish his naziris. Shlakish says, we have a pasuk by Pesach, carbon Pesach, the same idea. Torah tells you that if you're a tmei mace, then and you have to bring a Pesach Sheni. Question is, if you already brought your Pesach Rishon, and then afterwards somebody says, oh, you became Tamei, generally you have to bring a Pesach Sheni. But if they told you that you were Tumas Tahaim, you became Tamei from a Tumas Tahaim, then you don't have to bring a Pesach Sheni. So Rish Lakish said, and that's similar to Naziris. And they both complement each other. Rish Lakish says, Amakra, there's a pasuk by Carbon Pesach that says, Kiya Tamei Lenefesh Oibederech Rochoika. If you became Tamei to a dead body, or you are on a far road, for them, you don't have to bring, and you couldn't bring the Pesach Rishon, the Torah says you can bring Pesach Sheni. So being Tamei to a dead body is similar to being on a far road. Tiderech, ma derech begolui, just like a road. It's an open road. It's known by everybody. Afkol begoli. So also tmei nefesh. If you became tamei to a dead body, it's only if it was a known dead body, a known mace. That's when it interrupts your Pesach Rishon. But if you brought your Pesach Rishon and they told you became tamei with a tumas at the time that nobody knew about, then you wouldn't have to redo the Pesach that you brought, the Pesach Rishon. You don't have to bring Pesach Sheni. So we have two sources. That's what the Gemara thinks. The Gemara says that doesn't make sense, that there should be a source for this. We find in the Mishnah Ezeu tumas atoim. The Mishnah actually describes what is an example of a tumah of the deep. Kol she'eina makira echad b'soif olam. One person knew that there was a dead body here. Imagine they excavated a road and then they discovered that there was a dead body there. Nobody knew that somebody was buried there. Avo makira echad b'soif olam. If one person knew about it, that's not called tumah of the deep. The Gemara says, Bishlama, this all makes perfect sense, man derech, that you learn tumas atahaim from the words of ki derech, that by Karban Pesach, where the Torah juxtaposes the tameh of being a dead body to a road. Therefore, shapeh, that makes certain sense, because a road is open, at least some people know about it, and the dead body has to be known at least by one person. Then it's an open road. Then it's an open. It's called Tumah Hayadua. It's known. Somebody knows that there was a kever over here or mace over there. So that makes perfect sense. The way that Mishnah describes what a Tumas Atahaim is. According to the opinion that what makes a Tumas Atahaim and what makes Tumas Hayadua, Tumas Hayadua, it means you know about it. So that therefore, Himakira Echad B'Soifa Oilam. What does it matter just one person knowing about it? Since you yourself, the Nazir himself, never knew about it, it should be in the category of Tumas Atahaim. And why does the Mishnah say, no, if one person knows about it, it's not called Tumas Atahaim, it's called Tumas Hayadua. So, and another question is, the Mishnah says, the Brisa says, how the time we learned in the Brisa, they found on a road, the other question is another question. How did Tanya we find in a brisa? You find a dead body that's blocking the whole road. Betruma tame. So if a person passed that road and they told him, "Oh, we just discovered a dead body in the underneath the ground there that nobody knew about it," so then regarding if he touched truma, that truma remains tame. The Nazir uva oisiyas Pesach. But if he finished his Naziris or made it Pesach Rishon, and then they told him, "Oh, you passed that road. We just discovered a body there. So, and we for certain that you passed over this body. Tar, yatar." The question is, Maishno, what should be the difference between Truma and Nazir? If you're saying Tumas Atahoim is not, it doesn't interfere with anything. So why should the Truma become Tameh and the Nazir Nasiyas Pesach? We consider you Tahar. It should be something learned from a pasuk. And there are other questions. This whole Tumas Atahoim thing, it only works if the Nazir finished his Naziris. If he didn't finish his Naziris, then it doesn't. We're not lenient with Tumas Atahoim. So the Gemara says, Tumas Atahoim, Gemara Gemila. The fact that Tumas Atahoim is a lenient type of Tuma is Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. So again, what is the Tumas Atahoim? Tumas Atahoim is a Nazir that finished his Naziris. And they told him that you went on such and such a road, and we just discovered a body that nobody knew about it, that's buried under that road, and you certainly passed over that road. The answer is, since you completed a Naziris, by taking the haircut, we don't make you recount your Naziris. It's not demolishing Naziris. Obviously, you're considered Tamei Meis, and you have to have Paraduma water sprinkled on you, but it doesn't make you have to recount your Naziris. So be the Eved, you yotzed in Nazir, even though you're a Tamei Meis. And that's what makes it a Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, because it's not so understandable. The Commissioner said that im achlo gileach, if it's prior to you finishing in Naziris, then even Tumas Atahaim would make you, if they told you about a Tumas Atahaim, you have to recount your Naziris. So what determines, it seems the Mishnah decides that what ends in Naziris. We had a machlekes between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanan. Rabbi Lezer says taking the haircut. After bringing the karbanos, a Nazir takes his haircut, then he can drink wine. According to Rabbanan, it's bringing one carbon. And we bring one carbon, your Naziris is over, the Nazir can drink wine. Since our Mishnah determines that the end of the Naziris is by taking the haircut, Mantana, who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Lazar, the author of Ratana is Rabbi Lazar. The Amma Tiglachas Me'akaves, that just taking the haircut That's what stops the Nazir. That's what ends the Naziris. That's what ends the Naziris. As long as a Nazir did not take his final haircut, that haircut, at the end, he still cannot drink wine and be Mitamed Mace. Gemara says another question regarding the, once we brought up Rabbi Elazar, we have a question about Rabbi Elazar. What is his opinion regarding another matter? And we're going to bring a proof from our Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar has an opinion that's different than the Rabbanan. If day number 30, Naziris is over. Day number 31, a Nazir is supposed to bring his karbanos. Let's say prior to bringing his karbanos, he became Tamei, 31. It's the 31st day. Rabbanan said, as long as you didn't bring the karbanos, you became a Tamei Mace, you have to restart your Naziris. Comes along Rabbi Elazar and says, no, your Naziris is over day 30. And it's already day 31. You're becoming Tamei. It's only soiser, it only demolishes 7 days. You wait 7 days till you yourself, the Nazir himself, can bring the karbanos. But you don't have to recount from day one. So Boya Rabbi Bar Chama asked the question. Nitma b'soich melois, if a person became Tamei, let's say on day 23, during the time of his Naziris, but v'noida loy la'acham melois, and then he became notified that that on day 31 that he became Tamei. Mahu, what is the din? Does he have to go back and recount the whole Naziris, or does he have to just wait 7 days? Mahu, what's the question? Basu yediyah azlin, and do we go of when you became notified that you became Tamei? V'yediyah acham aloisi. The notification of you became Tamei happened after you completed your Naziris on day 31, and therefore all you have to do is wait another 7 days. Or maybe it's different, since they're telling you that you became Tamei not on day 31. They're telling you you became Tamei on day 23. Just because you're just finding out about it on day 31, but really you became Tamei on day 23, and therefore you have to recount your whole Naziris. Ulamai, what are we going to talking about? Lemister, do you have to recount the whole Naziris? And the Gemara explains what I just said. Amar Rava. Rava said, Tashma, come in here from the Mishnah. If you became Tamei, if they told you about a Tumas Atahoim before you took that haircut, benkach, whether you became Tamei through a Tumas Hayadua or through a Tumas Atahoim, soiser, it demolishes your Naziris. You have to recount. Now, when were you notified that you became Tamei? What is our Mishnah talking about? Let's say you found out you became Tamei prior to day 31. Right? You found out on day 25 that you became Tamei on day 23. Do I have to say that you have recount the Naziris? Certainly, of course, you recount the Naziris. It's an open pasuk in Chumash. Elalav, it must be la'acham alois. You are finding out after you finished your Naziris. Day 31. They're telling you that you went over a Tumah Yadua or a Tumah Satayim on day 23. And the Mishnah says the word soiser, that demolishes. So the Gemara understands it demolishes your entire Naziris. And we said, who's our Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar? So since you're being notified of a tumah that happened on day 23, it demolishes your entire Naziris, and you have to recount from the very beginning. Shma mina. The Gemara says, Va'adayin tiboylach. Let me ask the question still. Soiser doesn't mean you have to recount the whole thing. Does it mean kuloi soiser, like you said, recount the whole thing? Or shiva soiser, maybe it only means you have to recount 7 days. And Laman, let's explain very clearly who we're asking this question to. Would you say our question is according to Rabbanan? The Rabbanan hold that if someone becomes Tamei on day 31, and he's notified on day 31, obviously, so he has to start the whole count. So certainly, Pshita the Kulei Saiser. So certainly, if they notified you on day 31 that you became Tamei on day 23, certainly you have to restart the whole count. There's no such a thing of not restarting the whole count according to Rabbanan. Either Rabbi Lazar, if you go according to Rabbi Lazar, Paul Acham Elois Shiva Saiser. According to Rabbi Lazar, anytime you complete any call Acham Elois, anytime you complete the Naziris, it's Shiva Saiser. It only demolishes if you're notified and you became Tamei on day 31 after you completed your Naziris. All you have to do is wait 7 days. So what is your question? So Amalach, so Rabbi Bechama question, this is explained himself even better. When did Rabbi Lezer say that you only have to wait 7 days? If you became Tameh on day 31 and you were notified on day 31, there Rabbi Lezer says you have to wait 7 days. V'hai lifnei meloisu. And therefore, maybe this is different. Since when did you become Tameh? You became Tameh early. You became Tameh on day 23. Could be Rabbi Lezer will hold that you have to restart the whole count. He wouldn't give you this leniency, or you have to wait a 7. Maybe here it's different. You're only notified after the completion of the Naziris. So if you were notified after the completion of the Naziris, maybe Rabbi Lezer will still say that all you have to do is wait 7 days. So that's what the Gemara is holding by the question. Someone is on day 31, and he was notified that he became Tomei on day 23. According to Rabbi Lezer, would you say it demolishes his entire Naziris? Or do we compare it to becoming Tomei on day 31 and being notified on day 31, and therefore it only demolishes 7 days? So Mina Ketani, from our Mishnah, you can solve this problem. Ketani, our Mishnah says, Ben kach or ben kach soiser. Whether if you didn't complete your Naziris, no matter what, soiser, you have to restart your Naziris. You have to restart your Naziris. Like can be palgan, and it doesn't make a differentiation whether you were notified the Tumah on day 31, and it's an actual Tumah that you became Tumah on day 31, or whether the Tumah happened on day 23, for example. It just says demolishing. So it's all one type of case. And it's all one type of case. So therefore, the Gemara is going to conclude that it must be that there's no difference. If you became Tameh on day 31 and notified on day 31, you have to wait 7 days. So also, if you were notified on day 31 that you became Tameh on day 23, it's the same idea. Since you completed your Naziris and now you're notified on a Tumah that happened on earlier, all you have to do is wait another 7 days. That's it. That's how the Gemara solves this question according to Rabbi Lezer. One more part of the Gemara. The Gemara again deals with Tumas HaTahoim. Tanarabana, Hamoitzi Meis. They found a dead body that nobody knew was there. Mutal l'rachba shel derech. It was lying on the width of the road, and nobody knew that this body was there. And then a guy passed over it and touched truma. Truma tamame. The truma remains tameh. But if he was a nazir and completed his nazirs, u'ba'ise pesach, or he did pesach rishon, tahar, he's tahar. In other words, we view him as a tahar. Therefore, he doesn't have to do over his naziris, and he doesn't have to bring a pesach sheni. The Med Devar Mamurim says the Brisa. When do we say by truma yotame is she'ein le'mokam la'avor? If you automatically had to pass over the dead body, there was no other passageway to go around the dead body. But if there was a passageway to go around the dead body, in other words, the dead body didn't cover the entire width of the road, then you'll be for truma. You'll also be tahar. Since we're not sure if you went over the dead body or you went around it. It's a suffix tumah in Rishus Harabim. Suffix tumah in Rishus Harabim is tahar. Okay. The Med Debar Mamum, another point. When did we say that with truma you'll remain tameh shemotza sholem, that you found the dead body completely intact? So then, for truma you remain tameh. Avol meshubar meforek. Let's say it was broken apart, was separated. So let's say there was an angle that there was a possibility that you walked in between the two broken pieces of this body. Afila ein mokam la'avar. Even though there's no place to go around the body, it basically covered most of the width of the road, but there's a passageway through the body that you could have gone in between the two parts of the body. Aishina, we're concerned, and we say that yatar will cause shame bein pirkei of a maybe you walked in between the two parts of the body, and therefore you remain tar again because it's a suffix tumah, a doubt whether you became tameh. And the halacha is a suffix tumah. If you don't know if you're tameh, and the question it occurs in the Rishus Harabim, in the public domain, we go lenient that you're tar. Uvekever, but let's say they found the dead body in one coffin. So then, so there's a drasha from the word oi oibekeber, that a coffin combines all the broken pieces into one, and it's the whole coffin has become tummy. Just walking over the coffin, even though there's no body there, you become tummy. I feel the meshuba or maforik. It doesn't matter what's with the bones of the body, broken or broken apart or separated. It doesn't. You're tummy, because the grave itself combines it into one body, and therefore the coffin itself, which covers the width of the road, is one unit. It considered as one unit. So no matter where you walked over, you are considered as walking over the dead body, and therefore even for truma you'll be tamei. The madvar mamurim. When do we say that we go lenient by truma? And that we can assume that maybe if there was no coffin there, that you walked in between the two broken parts of the body, the mahalach baraglev, you're walking with your feet. Aval ta'un or rachav, but if you're carrying a heavy load, or you're riding on a donkey, tamei, because when you're carrying a heavy load, you can't walk in a straight line. You're zigzagging, so you definitely probably went over parts of that dead body. When you're walking on your feet, it's possible to go in a straight line. You're not going to touch. You're not going to move it and not be an oil over it. But if you're carrying a heavy load or riding a donkey, it's impossible for you not to reach, move it, or touch it, and be maho on the mace. So that's for sure. That is for sure. You will consider you to be a tamei, even for truma. But b'med of our mamurim. Now we go back. We said that by Nazir and Oisei Pesach, if they found this body, no matter what, since nobody knew about the body, there's halacha b'Shem Sinai that says that you are tahar. You don't have to redo the Karban Pesach, and you don't have to redo the Naziris. That's only by Tumas HaTahaim. It's a Tumah of the deep that nobody knew about. Aval Tumah Yedua, but if it's a Tamei Mace that somebody knew about, Shloshtem Tameim, that everybody is Tamei. The Nazir, the Karisei Pesach, and the Truma. The Ezehu Tumas HaTahaim. What's called Tumas HaTahaim? We saw this before. Nobody ever knew there was a body here. Even one person who's living on the other side of the planet. But let's say there's somebody on the end of the planet that knew that there was a dead body here. That's not called a tumah of the deep, and therefore it's considered to be a tumah hayadua, that somebody must have known about it. And there's the halacha l'Moshe Messina does not kick in, and even by Nazir, Oisi Pesach, you will be tamei. So the Mishnah gives you an example of how to determine if nobody ever knew about it. If the body was hidden betevin, in an avalanche of straw, betzroiris, of rocks, there was a collapse in construction site, and nobody knew that there was a dead person under there. So harezu tumas hatahoim. That's called tumas hatahoim, tumah of the deep, and that's where the halacha l'Moshe Messina said. But let's say they found the dead body, b'yamim, in the river, and it's possible that somebody saw the dead body. Maybe he was on a boat or looked down and when the water cleared and you saw a dead body. Even if the dead body was in a dark place, or the clefts of the rock, where it's hidden nicely, but it's possible that somebody walked past this and saw that there was a dead body there. Maybe he had a lamp and he saw that there was a dead body there. So Einzu Tumas HaTahaim, that's not called Tumah of the deep. And now the Gemara says, V'loi Amru Tumas HaTahaim El Lameis Bilvad. The only din of Tumas HaTahaim is only regarding Tumei Mace, a dead body. But let's say it's a sheretz. And the dead sheretz, and nobody knew about it. And then it turns out that that this guy, they told him, oh, you touched this dead sheretz or something like that. And he touched Tameh and he touched Truma or something. So that we wouldn't consider that the halacha l'Moshe Messina of Tumas HaTahaim. It's only regarding a dead Tamei Mace. The more appropriate example for V'loy Amru Tumas HaTahoim El Lameis Bilvad is, let's say, somebody who counted 7 days of Ziva and then went to the mikveh and brought his carbon Pesach. And then all of a sudden that day he saw Ziva again. So the halacha is that really it turns out he was a tamei when he brought the carbon Pesach. It just demolishes his everything that he counted. And this was a tumah that nobody could have known that he's going to see Ziva again right after he brought the carbon Pesach. So that's tumas atahoim. So nevertheless, it's tumas atahoim, but not tumas atahoim regarding dead body. It's tumas atahoim regarding the tumah of Ziva. And therefore, because of that, you would have to bring, even if you brought the Pesach Rishon, you were not Yotze, you would have to bring Pesach Sheni. Okay, Be'ez Hashem will continue tomorrow on the bottom of Daf Samach Gimel Lamed Beis.